Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Zainab Avni. I'm an alignment coach and energy healer, and this podcast is all about giving messages of alternative healing and hope for people suffering from chronic pain and chronic illness. Today, with me is the wonderful Neil Durrans. Neil, hello! It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much indeed. It's good to be here.
Lovely. Let's get started. Tell us something about you.
Okay, so I've been working in therapy for a number of years now, since about 2014. I was in retail for 28 years, but became unwell. I became unwell with a condition called dystonia in 2014, and had to leave the retail industry in 2016. And I then started to work with me and with others to get myself better. And in 2018, I recovered, which is just incredible. And I've been working with dystonia ever since. So having a career in retail for most of my life, and then all of a sudden a huge pendulum swing in a different direction, you couldn't write it. So that's that. I've got a wonderful partner who actually sparked my recovery with one sentence, which was really interesting. I've got 4 wonderful kids as well. So life's great. We've got a good setup, but the way, if you were to take me back to the age of 40 and say, Neil, this is the direction your life would go, I would have said you're joking. So that's a bit about me. So I've been working with people since 2014, and then with dystonia 2016 onwards. The mind-body world has been my passion for a number of years now, and it's so eye-opening when we start to understand a different way, and then people can start to get better. So that's me. So my business is called Neil Durrans Therapy. I work with the mind-body symptoms, so keeping it in line with John Sarno's original TMS, because I think we need to pay respect to that. And that's what I do. I work with people day in, day out across the world, teaching them how to recover from these conditions. That's me.
Thank you for the introduction, and we are now going to basically take it all apart, because I want to go all the way back to the beginning. And first of all, I want to understand a little bit more about dystonia. I know that obviously people who are suffering from dystonia, they obviously know what it is, but for everyone else, what is that?
Okay, well, there's two terms for dystonia. There's lots and lots of different types. Ultimately, if you look at it on the medical perspective, it's a neurological condition which affects the muscles in the body, and there is no cure. So for me, my hand would claw in like this. My eyes then would shut down, so I couldn't look forward. I couldn't have a face-to-face conversation, because I could talk with my eyes open, but if someone else started talking, my eyes would shut. And then I had the muscles in the back of my neck pushing my head down. So we've got medical terminology of focal hand dystonia, blepharospasm, try saying that without spitting, and cervical dystonia, cervical spine. And there's many other different sorts of dystonia as well. So that's the medical terminology. The treatments are Botox injections into the muscles with a tense to try and make them flaccid to give you some relief. Brain medications like clonazepam, baclofen, lorazepam, things like that. Big medications. And of course, you can have a brain operation. DBS, it's called, deep brain stimulation, which is another option that's available to you.
Right.
That's the medical side. Really, really scary.
It definitely sounds that. And so you say you were in retail and then all of a sudden started feeling unwell. Were you immediately having the symptoms, or did you suffer from? Was it more gradual than that.
Gradual. So I'll tell you, I mentioned the first side description of dystonia. I'm going to mention the other side now, just
Sorry, yes.
before I lead into answering that question, if that's okay.
Yes.
The other side of dystonia is that it is a condition where you have muscle tension in your body, okay? And the brain is trying to do whatever it can to slow you down and stop you before something worse happens, okay? So the medical world label it as dystonia with no cure. I understand it as the brain trying to send you a message, and the message is slow down, you're burning out, or you've burnt out, okay? And when we start to change the diagnosis away from the medical one, which is no hope, into something with muscle tension and burnout, and we can change that, so therefore there is hope and there is recovery. That's the two different sides. The medical side is huge. My thinking, the way I recovered, is a drop in the ocean. So that's the challenge. But we'll come on to that a bit later, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think what you're already touching on is super important, which is really about how do we help people see beyond the diagnosis and beyond what the doctors are saying, because it's so easy to get into that story and believe that you have no hope and that you're doomed and all of that. So we're going to use exactly what you're saying to inspire and to bring more hope to the world.
That's great. I'm going to write something down so I remember to say it. Okay. So going back to 2014, as is common with these diagnoses, now these diagnoses can cover a number of different areas. So we could not just be looking at dystonia, we could be looking at fibromyalgia, we could be looking at ME, MS, lots and lots of the big diagnoses. They're often where people burn out. It's the tipping point. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, the tipping point is often a trigger. To get to burnout takes a long time. Okay. And it's only really a certain sort of character type that goes into burnout. Now, with me, I was the character type of the 100 miles an hour, the perfectionist, the people pleaser, but also being incredibly hard and self-critical of myself. So I was running, if I use the top of the screen, my maximum as a human being all of the time. Okay. But then what we have is life, and we have life stress. Okay. And I had one life stress too many, and that was the trigger to then drop me into burnout. And then my safety system started running and my brain took over. Mm-hmm. That was 2014. Myself and my partner, we lost a baby, and that tipped me over my threshold. Mm. So it started in my hand, and out of nowhere, it just went bang like this. And the pain and the screaming, it was just ridiculous pain. Now, I'd had an accident 17 years earlier. So I'm on the floor screaming, thinking something's gone wrong after all those years. When the medical world scanned it, nothing there. Everything was absolutely normal. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was the beginning of the what is wrong with me thinking. Okay. So I went into the medical world, and I was in the medical world, for until the end of 2016, the back end of 2016, when my partner gave me a light bulb moment, and then I traveled back out the other way.
And what was the light bulb moment? I'm so curious, if you can share.
I went to London to see a neurologist, and my eyes were shut, my head was down, I was in a very, very bad way. And we'd already done the Dr. Google thing and seen videos of people with the same reaction and the same symptoms. And we kind of knew it was blepharospasm. And she got me up onto her couch and she wanted to put Botox in my eyelids. Okay. Now, I'm not a fan of needles. Okay. And I'm happy about that. And as that needle touched my eyelid, I had a panic attack. I completely freaked out. Okay. And she said, look, I'm going to give you some morphine. I'm going to send you away. Come back in a couple of days, take the morphine, and then we'll do the injections. And it was on the way home from towards the train station where I said to my partner, I said, I don't see the point. I can't do this. I can't do this. And it was almost like rock bottom, 4 kids, and I can't open my eyes. I can't play football, can't play cricket, can't go running or riding a bike or anything like that. So she said to me, hey, your brain created this, so your brain can take it away. You're the damn therapist. Go figure it out. And that was what she said. And that was my turning point. Okay, and that was at the end of August 2016. Okay, at the end of 2018, I was fully recovered.
Say it again. When were you?
The end of 2018, I was fully recovered.
Amazing, amazing. So now I really want to hear about this. How did you move on from that? And you're right. That is a wonderful sentence. I'm so grateful for that sentence. And I really hope that everyone listening, takes that and make that their own light bulb moment as well. And so, what was your next steps?
I came in here.
Here.
And I was an NLP practitioner. I had just was completing my hypnotherapy course. So I just got everything out on the floor and I said, there must be something here. So I recorded myself in NLP, there's a technique called the fast phobia cure. Okay, where you take yourself up into, you come away from your body in the theatre, and you're watching yourself watching a movie, and you're going backwards and forwards. And so I recorded that as a kind of my first ever sort of hypnotherapy audio. And then I laid down on my couch and I played it to myself. And when I opened my eyes, I was like, what? And I ran next door to my partner. I said, look, my eyes are open. And she was like, you see, but they did shut down again. Okay. But I got them open. And when I'm working with people, I talk to them about glimmers. I talk to them about gaps, windows of opportunity, windows of proof that it doesn't need to be here. Okay. And that was a gap. So that started to motivate me on looking for the next gap. Mm-hmm. I went back to the neurologist 2 days later and I looked at her and she said, what have you done? And I'm like, I think you can recover. And she's like, no. And I said, I think you can recover. She said, well, if you think that people can recover, go get some people. And that's when I started working with blepharospasm. And I went onto a blepharospasm Facebook group, which, by the way, for anyone, it's toxic. All of these Facebook groups, support groups, they're not support groups. They are doom and gloom. They are toxic. Get out of them. I went on to one and I said, I need 10 volunteers. And I got 10 people from America mainly. And I just started working with them. Now, I didn't work face-to-face like this because I was still in symptom. So if someone was going to talk to me, my head would go down, my eyes would shut, and I'd be nervous, I'd be embarrassed. So I just did it on audio. And that's when I started to work with people whilst I was working with me. And any glimmers that I got, anything that I learned, I would teach them straight away. And that's kind of how my day has gone. But I knew I was going to get better. And I tell it to everybody. I know I'm going to recover, and I know you're going to recover. Mm-hmm. But obviously the person's got to know they're going to recover. And I did it. And my attitude, my mindset, my confidence, my appreciation of everything changed. I could get my eyes open, my head up again. And that's when my business just went, it started to grow because there started to be proof.
And I think what you're saying is so important because when people come to you or when they come to me or people, there is such a big fear of change. And even people that say, I really don't want this, they also don't know who they're going to be without this, whatever it is that they're suffering from. And when you are there and you say, it's okay, I've got you, we will take this step by step by step by step. And, you're not going to turn into a pumpkin, overnight. It's not, it's not that one of these things. It's actually together and slowly, and I've got you, that you're building this trust, and they can really start letting go of, well, the conditions and the symptoms and everything.
Yeah. And, the first thing, and I think it's quite common in the mind-body world, the first thing I get my clients to do is to get rid of their diagnosis, get rid of the labels you're carrying around with you, and start looking at you as a person, and look at the stress in your life, and look at your history. When I was working with myself, now I didn't discover this till 2021. Okay. I recovered in 2018, but I didn't find the mind-body world until 2021. So I'd been recovered 3 years before I realized there were people that understood this stuff. And I'm like, what? Why didn't I know you guys before? So really interesting that as I started reading through John Sarno's work and Mark Sofa's work, I started to get the point of my brain was trying to tell me for years that there are problems. I had eczema as a child, and through my life I had anxiety, I had sciatica, which is anatomically impossible, and I had acid reflux, all of these different conditions and diagnoses through the years, asthma, and then I burnt out at the end. Now I've not got any of that anymore, none of it. Okay. Because after reading through those books, I was like, oh my God, it's all mind body. And then I changed my attitude towards it. I wasn't scared of it anymore. Because one thing I have learned is fear and symptom loop. They go round and around and around. If you're scared of the symptom or stressed about the symptom, you're going to get more symptom. Okay, so it's trying to take the fear away from it. But once I realized that all of these things I was suffering with, there was no need for any of them, they all started to go away.
And I want to actually touch on that a lot more, and we really want to talk about that. So you really, we are going to talk about the mind body symptom now, and we're going to talk about John Sarno and everything that he, what he brought to the world. Where do we start? Because you say, so you're talking about the stress, and of course we all have stresses. We have people, I think, like you've also described it like there's one thing after the next, things just keep coming in, and people a lot of the time they don't even recognize the stress that they're in. They say, oh, going through something, but I'm fine, or I don't have time to really think about it, or I don't have time, or I don't even know, I don't want to open it up. Right. So there's kind of these things that people are pushing it back, and some people, people that mostly head people, they don't even know to recognize how to do the emotions. So how do you then now explain to people, how do you even start the conversation to say, actually, there is this thing that you've basically been avoiding or not processing, and now let's have a conversation. Where do you get started with that?
Well, I start with my intake form, which includes many questions about the person. And one of them, and I actually, Howard Schubner kindly gave me that form to use. I think I'll share that with yourself. And on that form, there's character type. And they'll talk about perfectionist, people pleaser, being hard on yourself, a rule follower, holding on to thoughts and feelings, things like that. And often the person will tick most of those. But I will look for the perfectionist, the wanting to be good for everybody, being hard on yourself and holding on to thoughts and feelings. Because it's not the stress of life that causes these conditions. It's how we process the stress that causes the conditions. Because if you look at myself and my partner, we both lost the baby. Her side of the trauma was much worse than mine, physically and mentally. So why didn't she get this? okay? Because there's an inconsistency there. Now, I was stuffing all of my grief and my emotions down to make sure she was okay. You okay? It's all right. It's okay. You've got this. You've got this. Okay. So she was grieving. She was letting it go. Okay. I, yes, was grieving, but I was stuffing a lot of it down. Okay. And that is what made me go over the edge of my tipping point. So it's the people that do not express the stress. They suppress it instead. They're the ones that end up with back pain or shoulder problems or headaches and migraines or eczema indeed, which is emotion coming through your skin. And so it's how we process stress that's important. And what I do is I teach people how to think, how to process their thoughts effectively so that we can keep the mind and the body in balance much, much more often. Because when we process things better, we then, there's no need for a reaction in the body. Okay. When we're stuffing it all down and putting on a smiling face, everything's okay. It's like, well, it's not, is it? Because you phoned in sick last week with back pain.
Right. And so the other thing that you just mentioned, which again, I want to understand a little bit more, is the fear of the pain, fear of the symptoms, fear of what it is that you're feeling. So here you are, here one is, someone gets up in the morning and recognizes that actually there is a problem, and then start looking, maybe going into Google, maybe start really paying attention to the sensations and what is not well in them. And like you say, the fear is coming up. And yeah. Okay, I'll let you continue.
The brain is super clever, and the brain's in charge of every single part of your body. So if it wants to mess around with something to give you a message, it will do that. But then, of course, what we do because of our conditioning as children, when we find there's something wrong with us, now we start with Dr. Google. We type in the symptoms, and of course it brings up the very worst things it could be. And then you start panicking. Oh my God, I think I've got this. I think, oh my, this is going to be terrible. How am I going to work? I've got 3 kids. And we start to worry. We start to catastrophize. We start to bring about the fear. Now, fear is the one thing that the unconscious part of the brain can't cope with it. So when we put fear in, it panics. And the symptom that it's presenting, which is supposed to be a message, then magnifies. So we feel like it's getting worse. Okay. So we're like, okay, it's been here for 3 weeks now. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. I'm really worried. I'm going to the doctors. And then, of course, as has been spoken about by John Sarno and the like, the doctors will then arrange a scan. Let's say it's back. They'll arrange a scan, and then you will get a diagnosis of degeneration or bulging disc or something like that. And then it's been confirmed there's something wrong with you. And then what we've done is we've just connected the pain to remain.
Right. Now you have the diagnosis.
It's now connected, and that pain will then stay there, and then it will become your identity. Yeah. Oh no, I can't walk that far. My back won't. No, I can't do it. And we start putting excuses in place. I can't run. I can't exercise. I used to love swimming, but because of this back, I can't do it anymore. So it takes over and it becomes your identity. And we're just living in the fear of the symptom. But if we were to get a different diagnosis, if we were to sit down in the doctor's office and they say, so I hear that you've got back pain. I'm going to scan that just to make sure there's nothing sinister there. But I want to talk about what's been going on in your life around about the time that happened. Well, I've been going through a terrible time in my relationship, and I think we're going to divorce, or my dad's not well, and I'm starting to have to look after him. He's got dementia, and whatever it might be. I hate my job. Whatever's going on in life, that will be a key indicator then as to why you've got back pain, because the brain is trying to say, don't go to work. Don't go to work. Don't look after them. Tell them you can't even get out of the chair, okay? Because you hate the idea of doing it. So if you had a doctor that actually gave you the real understanding of as to why this is here, and also scan to check there's nothing sinister, you'd come away with it's okay. It's all going to go away. and it would go away. Okay. So the labels we're given hold these conditions in place.
Yeah. So let's now really talk about the mind-body symptom. You know, we kind of touched it from different areas, but now let's put it on the table and now let's see, what do we mean by that?
Mind-body symptom. Okay. So I'm going to start with dystonia to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So dystonia, mind-body symptom. So if we can phrase it another way, it's an emotional presenting as a physical. It's an emotion spilling into your body presenting a physical symptom. Okay. Now, emotional pain comes from the same part of the brain as physical pain does, the same parts of the brain. So that's why it feels like there's something broken or damaged. But when we go and get a scan with dystonia, when we go and get a scan, an MRI, so someone's head's gone like this, okay? So we get, okay, there's something wrong there, okay? It looks wrong, someone's head's doing this or whatever it might be. Let's go and get a scan. And the scan will come back clear. Dystonia is the cleanest of all diagnoses because it never shows up anywhere, okay? So with your head like this and a scan showing nothing, we have to then turn towards the emotional cause. If there's nothing physically broken or damaged, no tumors, no infections, nothing like that, then we have to turn to the emotional stress cause. It's the only direction to go. Because there's nothing broken or damaged, treating the muscles is the wrong thing to do because there's nothing wrong with the it feels like there's something very wrong with the muscles, but there's nothing, as per scan, wrong with the muscles. So we're treating a symptom instead of treating the person.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we treat the person, the symptom, which I actually call a reaction, okay, will then go away because you look at the cause, which starts off in childhood. You look at the trigger, which creates this. And then you look at the solution. What do we need to do now? And when we start working with the solution, the reaction starts to disappear. I never talk to people about their symptoms. I'm not interested in their symptoms. How's your neck? I don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about the solution. How are you getting on with the solution? Okay.
This is so, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, obviously I do the same. I work with the same kind of thing. So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about my clients and the things that they're telling me. And it's so difficult for people to understand or to make this connection, you know, that I have a physical pain and you're telling me that it's emotional. And of course, a lot of the time they completely dismiss you and they say, fine, I'll meet you, you know, in 3 months, whenever you're ready. That's okay. But it really is, that I feel like this is a whole, you know, something that we have to really, I guess, teach people because it is so difficult. And I always say that your brain is giving you a message to basically go back and look at your emotions, but instead you get the message and you go to the doctors. Now you get the diagnosis and you completely, you know, went away from the original, you know, what the idea was. So it's kind of, you know, I always say that the brain maybe didn't think that through well enough to to actually direct you to the right put you in the right direction. But how do you help people understand? Really, is it really just by saying, look, the tests are clear and there's nothing wrong? Because I guess in like you mentioned with the back pain earlier, when you have the scan, and what John Serno as well is saying a lot, that there is this, you know, degeneration, or, you know, that caused by age anyway. So it's easy for people to say, no, but I have something physical. How do you have that conversation?
Okay. And you're absolutely right. When there's something on the scan, because the medical world will only look at the anatomy, so they're not really trained in emotions. They're definitely not trained in the unconscious or subconscious part of the brain. So they'll only look at the anatomy for abnormalities, and then they'll find the abnormality, and then there you go, that's why you're in pain. So the person comes away with saying, right, it's because I've got a bulging disc. Now, when they come and see me, I'll say, right, have you had a scan? Because I need to make sure there's nothing sinister there. So they say, yes, I've got a bulging disc. I'm like, okay, right, that's cool. What if I told you the pain was nothing to do with the bulging disc?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because there's
Yes.
okay, all right, that's fine. And then I asked this question: does the pain ever turn up, get worse, turn down, calm down, or turn off briefly if you're distracted doing something different or sleeping? Well, yeah, sometimes it gets worse and sometimes it calms down. And yeah, there are times it's not there. When I sit down, it's not there. I said, so what? When you sit down, you've not got a bulging disc. And they're like, what? I'm like, so when you sit down, there's no bulging disc. And I said, well, there is. I said, so where's the pain? Oh, right. So I just start to break down the rigidity of their logic, the limiting beliefs that this causes this. And I just look for inconsistencies. That's all I do. I look for inconsistencies because the one thing about the brain is it's very, very inconsistent. Okay, sciatica can be on one side of the leg and then it's on the other side. It can be there one day or it's not there. It can get worse in the cold. How? What's the story there? So it's understanding that, does it change? Does it turn up, turn down, turn off? And with dystonia, let's say cervical dystonia in the neck, or someone who's stuck like this, for example, when they sleep at nighttime, they'll sleep like this. And their husband's like, what's going on there? And they wake up in the morning, the symptoms begin again, and he'll say, you were looking the other way last night when you were sleeping. Was I?
Yeah.
Okay. At night time, mostly the unconscious part of the brain switches things off because it's a safe place. But during the day, depending on the emotional stress and what you're stuffing inside will determine the strength of the symptoms, or what you're worrying about in the future will determine the symptoms. So I look for those inconsistencies and I say, come on, it's not about the pain. The pain is not linked to the bulging disc. Okay. And in the first session that I work with, we switch the pain off because we understand the inconsistencies. We understand, yes, there's a bulging disc, and yes, probably most people have bulging discs or degeneration in their body. There's been plenty of studies to confirm that with no pain. So the first thing we do is get them to understand it, and then we turn the pain off.
And can you share a little bit more about how you turn it off? I mean, I know that it's a many, I know that your first session is not a 50 minutes, a 15 minutes thing. It takes some time, but
my sessions they're quite long, 2.5 to 3 hours long, because it's not about treating a symptom, it's about educating the person in front of you. But during that session, I teach them how the mind works. I teach them about the conscious mind, the unconscious mind. I teach them about pain. Pain should only be there if you're broken or damaged. If you cut your finger in the garden on a rosebush thorn, that really, really hurts, but then when you look at it and you make a decision, oh, that's okay. Well, then the pain will subside. The unconscious mind knits the skin back together again over a couple of days. If you break your arm or you break your leg, that's significantly different. Okay, you need to go to the hospital. You need to get treatment for that, for the cast on it. And when they put the cast on, the pain goes down. And then over the next 6 to 8 weeks, as the unconscious mind knits the bone back together again, the pain disappears. So you should only be in pain if there's something broken or damaged. Okay, that's the first thing. But I've got a bulging disc. Does it turn up, turn down, turn off? Yes, but it's not a bulging disc. Okay.
I mean, maybe there is a bulging disc, but it's not what is causing you the pain.
Causing the pain. So I then connect with the unconscious part of the brain, which is causing the pain. And because we're right with our logic, let's go with my light going here. Because we're right with our logic, and the client gets it. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, then we have enough weight to say to the brain, switch the pain off now. And when that person opens their eyes and they're like, okay, so what have you done? I haven't done anything. You've done it.
It's just magical, isn't it? To wake up and to open your eyes, like you said at the beginning, right? You open your eyes So you open your eyes and actually you
and then
things.
check in, because the more the conscious mind understands, the less power the unconscious mind has over the symptom, because that's when the fear gets removed and you look at it in a different direction. Okay, and then you approach it differently. It starts to dilute and break down then. With the big physical symptoms like this that take a little bit longer, but there'll be about 50% of people I work with that are in chronic pain when they come to me, and we switch that off immediately. We get that gone, and these symptoms change as they go through their solutions to change.
So what I'm curious, like you say, the cause of the problem, a lot of the time starts really from childhood. Also, will also be added to that with the way that we deal with stress and trauma and events that happen, emotional events that happen in our lives, and how, as you said, we are suppressing them and not allowing them to come out. So this is understanding what got in there, and then you said, other than the reaction, you were talking about the solutions. So I mean, in my work, I talk a lot about exactly that, the cause and the solution. So how did you end up where you are at the moment, and how are we coming out of this? How do we basically, the way that I call it, is how do we get back into alignment when we do what our soul intended for us to do? Then all of these messages, all of the symptoms, they're not needed anymore. And for things like psoriasis, for example, or fibromyalgia, it all goes away. But where do you, because I know also that you mentioned, I think your initial sessions are they're shorter. I work with people for about 10 sessions, but for you is around 4 at the beginning, when you get things sorted, or go back into alignment. Or so where do you put more of your attention? Is it in the cause or really on the solution, and what does that look like?
So it's the causes. I find that when I work with someone, it's understanding the challenges of childhood, without having to go through all of the memories of childhood. Because people have lived it already. They don't need to relive all of the traumas they've already been through. And there are so many therapists that feel we have to bring people through all of their troubles again, and it's really scary. The conscious adult, just needs to understand what's happened, needs to understand the effect that it's had on the child and your early conditioning. And that's the way you've been leading your life from that point onwards, running away from fear, mostly the fear of not getting it right, the fear of not meeting expectations, parents mainly, or teachers or grandparents, or religion, whatever it is that is the key stressors. And children are desperately trying to meet those expectations, to not get told off, to do things right, to make their parents happy, whatever it might be. But it puts an incredible amount of stress if we've got strict parents, or parents that drink and their mood changes from being really happy to really angry, whatever it might be. These are incredibly challenging for the children. In my life. So with this early conditioning, the children are feeling like they're just never getting it right. They're always being criticized. Not there, John, there. No, not there, over there. Not like that, like that. Constant criticism. So by the time we're 10 years old, we're emotionally conditioned for the rest of our lives. And that's why we become the perfectionists, the people pleasers. We're self-critical because we've been criticized in our childhood so much. Okay, never get anything right. You got 9 out of 10. Why didn't you get 10 out of 10? Well, I got 9 out of 10, but you didn't get 10 out of 10, did you? Okay, so there's a lot of that goes on, right? Certainly in the earlier years of parenting, it's getting better in places. So the early conditioning is fear. And then we go into life. We have imposter syndrome, often high achievers, because we're running away from the fear of failure. So we push harder to achieve more. I recognize that 100% in myself. Okay, so it's getting the client to understand why they're the way they are today. Okay, but not going through every single trauma. So in the form that I get them to complete, I get them to describe their parents. I get them to describe briefly if there's anything adverse in childhood. Some people get abused physically, emotionally. We know that this goes on, right? They need to understand that so that we can then make the changes today. Because when you condition something and program it, we are one big computer after all. So when we condition something and program it, well, that's the way it's going to run until you reprogram it to do something different. And that's what I do, is I look at the conditioning and the programming and the patterns that are running, and then I recondition and reprogram and repattern the programs that are not working for them. Often it's slowing people down mentally and physically. It's getting people to bring in some boundaries and limits, because these people will say yes to everything and everybody, even though it's way beyond their capacity to achieve it. And of course, the relationship with themselves, hard, critical. No one will see that. Yeah, no, that's great. He had a great presentation. Oh, thanks very much. I thought it was rubbish. I didn't think it was any good. I thought that went wrong, and I stuttered over that word, and bang, 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 bang.
Mm.
So I teach people how to do things differently.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really, really amazing. And I recognize all of these things, of course, for my own clients, and it's so interesting that when people come and have that conversation, and you just ask them a question, even sometimes it's just as simple as how are you, and
Right.
all of a sudden all of these things come up, and you're asking yourself, where did it come from? I mean, of course we know where it came from, but we hear it and they don't. And so when we kind of report back what we hear, is like,
Right.
did I do that? Did I say that? And so it's a lot of it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. I'm so happy that we're talking about all of this, because it really helps. I know that it helps the people listening and to really understand how the mind body works. We are feeling it in the body, but it doesn't start there. It really starts in a different place. One question I get a lot is, because I often talk about the emotional root cause of pain and chronic pain and chronic illness, and then people say, well, what about, because I'm differentiating between structural pain, or and chronic pain, not structural. I mean, acute pain. So something like you said, you broke your arm. Yes, makes sense. It will be. It's not necessarily. We're not necessarily looking for the emotions. What kind of pushbacks do you get from people when you either people who come to you, but I guess they're already in the mindset of wanting to heal, but people when you talk to them in general, when you meet them in the pub or something, what kind of pushbacks do you get?
Disbelief. You've got, I would say, over 90% of the population that are, probably more than that would, if they have a symptom, they'll go to the doctors and they'll take the treatment, the medication, the operations, whatever it might be. And it's a small percentage of people, like it's a tiny percentage of people working like this, that will actually think outside the box and think, I think there's something else to this. And that's when they start to look outside the box. So all of the people on my dystonia group, there will be 90% of those that be sitting there going, not sure about that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I do video after video after video, giving as much evidence as I can. I got client testimonials, and I'll still get people saying, well, they can't have had dystonia in the first place. And even a lady yesterday was saying to me, where's your pictures of when you had the condition? Where's your videos? I was like, all right then. And I put them all in there, and she's like, I'm so sorry. Just because I recovered, it doesn't mean I'm now telling a lie that I didn't have it in the first place,
Yeah.
So yes, pushback, absolutely, because it doesn't sound right. Because the symptoms feel so physical, it really feels like there's something wrong. You think about IBS and stuff like that. It really feels like there's something wrong with you. But when you say to them, no, this is all because of the stress in your life and it's coming out, the emotions spilling into your body, they're like, okay, Neil, do you want another drink?
Yeah.
Like that. Okay. So I don't push myself on people. One of my friends had a big strap on his arm, and I said, oh, what's happened there? Oh, it's golfer's elbow, absolutely killing me. And I was like, right, okay. And then
Yes.
we're a funk. He said, "What do you think, Neil?" And I said, "I know what I think, but I also know what you think. So let's leave it there."
Yeah, we're gonna let you have it.
Yeah,
So
we carried on with the day. This is an interesting point. We carried on with the day, and in the afternoon, after a few pints, the strap was off, and he was doing this and he was doing that. I said, "How's the arm?" He said, "Oh, yeah, it's much better at the moment." Really? Okay. He relaxed.
yeah, exactly. And that reminds me of a really nice story about Eric. What is his name? Erickson, Milton Erickson.
Oh, Ericsson, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One of for anyone who doesn't know, one of the greatest hypnotherapists at the very beginning, at least. And I read a story about him saying that the family of this man asked him to come and visit this man in the hospital because he was in such terrible pain and he just couldn't find any way to calm the pain down. So he couldn't lie down, he couldn't walk, he couldn't sit. He was just top pain non-stop. So Erickson went to visit the man in the hospital, and he knew that he was interested in tomatoes. So he just sat there for 2 hours talking to him about types of tomatoes and how to grow them and the climates and the all of that. And he was then able to show the man actually that for the last 2 hours he had no pain at all. He did not experience the pain, and this is just so it's so interesting. I want to ask. Obviously, you're working mainly with dystonia, but you just mentioned IBS. What other because not everything is the mind body symptom, but what are some of the other very common pains and illnesses that we hear about that actually you say, yes, this is definitely the mind body symptom?
Everything that's on my intake form, and there's 37 different conditions. I'll give a few. I won't go through the whole lot. I'll give you a few.
Okay.
So let's have a look at heartburn. That's one of the most common ones. IBS, migraines and headaches, eczema, anxiety, OCD, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, nearly always, even if there's a rotator cuff tear, even if there's degeneration, hip pain, TMJ, the tension in the jaw, people grinding their teeth at night time. Yeah, well, that's because of your gritted determination in life. Okay, that's how it's presenting in here. Okay. Carpal tunnel syndrome, that's one that's spoken about a lot in the mind-body world. That's often to get you out of doing work because you hate your job. Okay. Chronic fatigue, palpitations, tinnitus, dizziness, things like that. As long as there is nothing sinister on a scan, as long as there's nothing broken, damaged, as long as there's no infections or tumors, look at the person and the stress that they're under and start working backwards to begin with to put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. Check if it turns up, turns down, turns off. Okay, because with all of those conditions, they are variable. Okay, normally depending on the stress that you're under. I'm really, really nervous about this interview that I'm doing later on. I've been on the toilet for the last 3 days. I can't believe it. Okay, right, okay. And then start working into the solution. Okay, and it will be expressing those emotions, get them out instead of stuffing them in. Processing your thoughts effectively, keeping yourself in the now. It's very safe in the now, normally, stereotypically. Instead of the future of catastrophe, fear, the regret of the past, anger. The amount of people that have had their gallbladder removed because they have been stuffing down anger, bitterness, resentment, guilt. Those emotions live in the gallbladder and the liver. So if they're flaring all of the time because you're stuffing them down, you'll have your gallbladder whipped out in no time. But then, of course, when you got the symptom imperative, is when the medical world take out the gallbladder, it then moves somewhere else. The next organ is the liver.
This is fascinating, and I think that there's so much in everything that we're saying. And I really, really hope that people listening start to at least ask themselves, do I have anything to lose from entertaining this idea that maybe the doctors, don't know everything. Although I'm not dissing the doctors and the medicine, of course, they have their place in the world, but just really in cases of diagnosis, when people say, well, it's incurable, I really do invite people to say, hang on,
Right.
let's have another conversation, because you could be really, on the way out in a sense of not feeling your symptoms and not having the pain and the illness actually in such a short time. I mean, fibromyalgia going in 6 sessions, with one of my clients, and she's been going it for all of her life. Psoriasis got in 8 sessions. You really don't have to go through all of this pain. You just need to dare to think in a different way.
And I tell you something else which is interesting, and this has happened a few times to me now, where and the most recent was actually this week as well, where because I work with the person, not the symptom. Okay, we find other things change, and I always say to the people I'm working with, because they'll be thinking of the key symptom, the big one, right?
Yeah.
I'll say to everybody, change equals change. If you start to notice changes anywhere, that means change is happening. You're on your road to recovery. So I had a lady here doing a spider phobia with me, which I used to do years ago. And she brought her boyfriend because the boyfriend didn't want her girlfriend to be with this weird guy, okay, on her own. And yeah, fair enough. So he came in and I worked with her. We deleted the phobia because it was a childhood thing, not an adult thing. And then I just relaxed down just by using the unconscious part of the brain, not hypnosis or anything. And I said to the guy, you might as well close your eyes as well, because your unconscious mind is listening too. So he shut his eyes, she shut her eyes. And when I finished, she opened her eyes and she's looking around like this in her mind. And he's sitting there doing this. And I'm like, you okay? He said, yeah, my back pain's gone. I said, oh, right, okay. I didn't even know you had back pain. He said, I've had it for 18 months. What's going on there? And she's there going, I'm looking at spiders in my mind and I can't feel fear. What's happened there? And it's like, yes, fantastic. It's amazing. a lady I worked with tinnitus, she reported back that her fear of the dark had gone. I never worked with the fear of the dark, but the unconscious mind switched it off for some reason. Didn't need to be there. It's a childhood thing. Monsters in the wardrobe, things like that. A lady this week working with dystonia, she reported back to me that she is no longer constipated. And I'm like, okay. She said she can yawn again. Like, I didn't know you couldn't yawn. I've been able to yawn for ages. Okay. She said, I've started sweating again. I couldn't sweat. All the way through the summer, I didn't sweat. Like, okay. And she said, I've started laughing. She said there could be something really funny on, and everyone else is absolutely cracking up. And I'd just be sitting there like this, with the emotions stuffed down inside of her, right? Yeah. And as we're working together on a solution, the brain is starting to turn on all of these systems again. Because when we're in fight or flight, the brain turns things off, like the immune system, digestive system, things like that, which is why we gain weight if we're under stress and pressure, because the digestive system doesn't process your food effectively. So all of these different symptoms that I had no idea about started to come back online. So I said, this is it, you're recovering. But she said, but this is, I said, I don't care about that. Everything else is coming back online. This will come back online too. Trust yourself. Okay, it's incredible. So change equals change. Okay, it's amazing.
Amazing. Neil, I feel like we could really talk forever, and there's so much,
A big subject.
Well, there's so much brilliance that you're bringing, in your conversation, and it's really, anyone listening can really hear that what you're talking about, and that you've worked with so many people to bring such an incredible change. So, of course, I really encourage anyone listening, if they're suffering from anything, get in touch and have that conversation, and that's really awesome. Anything last words to say or mention before we say goodbye for today?
Yeah, I think there's one really important thing for anybody that's suffering with something that's chronic. Now, chronic is something that's lasting more than 12 weeks. The body heals in about 8 to 10 weeks maximum. So if something's lasting and you feel you've got no hope, doctors are just prescribing medication or operations, whatever, go for a second opinion, but not the stereotypical second opinion, which is to go to another doctor, because they're going to find the same things. They're going to be looking at the same things. Go and find a mind-body specialist, like myself, Enav, other people around the place, okay, to ask for their opinion, okay, because we'll give you a different conversation. I think that's important. We'll give you a different conversation, a different way of looking at it. We'll bring the inconsistencies in, which will give you, hang on a second, another direction of thought, which can then actually lead you to your recovery. And so if you feel like you're just not getting any answers from the medical world and there's nothing sinister there, that's important. They do have a purpose. They fix you when you're broken. They can diagnose by saying there's a tumor or an infection or something broken. Brilliant. Okay. But if they find nothing really that's outside of normal wear and tear for a human being, and it's going on and on and on, seek a second opinion from a mind-body therapist, because that's when you'll start to get different answers. You can also, and I do this to all of my clients, okay, you can also point them towards literature that's out there. You can point them towards John Sarno's mind-body prescription, which will have all of the diagnosis in. You can point them towards Mark Sofa's To Be or Not to Be Pain-Free, a bit light-hearted, but to the point. And you can also look at Alan Gordon's The Way Out, because, again, a really funny book, but it hits home character type, the emotional stress, how we process, and how it then spills into symptoms. And when you start to manifest yourself in that world and that thinking, and you start to see yourself in this literature and these conversations, well, then you're standing a much, much better percentage chance of recovering.
Exactly. And I just want to add, of course, our friend Howard Schubiner.
Howard Schubiner, of course. Howard Schubiner's book,
Unlearn Your Point. Unlearn Your Pain.
And he has actually said this recently, and I've actually heard him say this. He made a mistake. Okay, and his mistake was 28 days. He's put 28 days to unlearn your pain. Take time, take dates away.
Right.
Getting better is not about how long it takes. It's about knowing that you will. And he's put his hand up and he said, I should never have put 28 on that book, because it puts pressure on people. They get to 28 days, they're still the same, failed, didn't work. Okay?
Yeah,
take time and dates away, off you go on your journey. Okay, it will happen. Yes, amazing.
It really is about, starting to look at things differently, to start bringing, like you said, the emotions. When you understand, you're basically breaking the patterns. You're no longer doing what you've done before. You're actually moving forward in a more, I want to say aligned way, but I can also say in a way that is basically more, you choose for now what suits you now. So instead of using your 5-year-old brain, with the coping mechanism of back then, you're actually saying what suits me now. And it is a learning. It is a learning process, and learning takes time. But yes, you will definitely get new results.
And recovery is all about taking responsibility and not always looking out for someone else to fix you. It's recognizing that you've got all of the resources to fix yourself.
Yes,
and that's quite empowering for people.
Yeah. So this is really going back to your partner's, wonderful comment from the beginning.
Yeah. Without that, I wouldn't be doing this today.
Yeah. So brilliant. Neil, thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate you and our conversation. I loved every minute of it. Just to mention for anyone watching, I will of course put Neil's details and everything, that you can find him, find out more about him, following on social media and all of that. And yeah, if you're watching it and the replay, please leave us a message, a comment. What did you learn? What did you find out how are you, what are you, how are things for you, basically. Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you so much. And it's been I hope that people have at least had some different lights coming on and different, oh, hang on, that's me. Because then you're already making change. So, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you.